What is up, guys? It's your boy at DFS Jimmy bringing you another early week course preview from the guys over at FanShareSports.com. That's right, FanShareSports.com. They listen to every podcast. They're reading every article, aggregating all the sentiment from around the industry into one concise, easy-to-use news feed for you to go along with their lineup builder they launched last week, the cheat sheets that they have on tap, everything you need over at FanShareSports.com. Make sure you get over there and check those guys out. Also, while you're at it, make sure you give me a follow at DFS Jimmy on Twitter. Now, let's get into the RBC Canadian Open for this week. Actually, before we get into that, big congratulations to this guy, Francesco Molinari, pulling it out for his first major victory at Carnoustie. The hottest golfer on the planet right now, keeps his streak going and notches his first major. Coming in T13 for tags last week on FanShareSports.com. Wasn't really a super chalky play, wasn't really a great pivot play, just kind of found himself in the middle of the mix. Great price tag, good value on Molinari last week. Hopefully you guys were on him. Either way, big congratulations to Molinari notching his first major win. But now, we have to get into the RBC Canadian Open. Let's break down Glen Abbey. Let's take a look at the golf course. We'll take a look at the scorecard. We'll look at some of the golfers that have played well here in the past. And then we'll wrap it up with some key stats that I'm focused on for the week. So, taking a quick look. Actually, we'll start here at the course. This is the 18th hole right here behind me at Glen Abbey at the Canadian Open. You might remember the hole, probably the most famous hole at Glen Abbey for I believe it was the 2000 edition, where Tiger Woods hit, I think, a 6-iron out of the bunker up in the top left corner, carried the hazard all the way to the green. I think it was like a 220 yard 6-iron. Really impressive shot, been clipped a million times. Probably the most famous clip of Glen Abbey. But the picture here at the 18th hole does give you an idea or sort of a setting of style for the course. It's a Parkland style course. There are some elevation changes throughout. There's quite a bit of water. I think water comes into play on 7 or 8 holes here, and there's plenty of bunkering as well, both in front of greens, short and as well as long, to protect the greens on the backside. Glen Abbey is a Jack Nicklaus designed course. It's a par 72, has bent grass greens, bent grass poana in the fairway. Annually one of the easier courses on tour. Not terribly difficult for these guys, can be scored on. Like most Nicklaus courses, it seems to favor a fade, at least visually. It seems to favor a fade, so maybe pay attention to that as you're selecting players for your player pool this week. Jack played a big fade, and most of his courses seem to set up for big fades as well. But that said, not a whole lot special about Glen Abbey. Lots of mature trees, kind of tight fairways. The fairways, especially if they're firm, will be missed quite a bit here this week. The fairways tend to be missed a little more than average here at this course, so it makes for a lot of approaches out of the rough, or at least approaches not quite coming out of the fairway. Might be in the first cut, might be in the second cut, but generally speaking, fairways are missed more often here than your average tour event. So, that we'll get into the players that have played well here, but it sets up for the course to be played in 2 very distinct different ways. But before we get into the players that have played well, let's look at the scorecard and kind of see how the course breaks down. One thing you'll notice is, as we scroll down, that they have no less than 400-yard par 4s here. All of the par 4s are of the 450 and 450 plus yardage. 6 of the holes, 400, 450, make up the bulk of the par 4s. And then your long holes, of course, are much more difficult. They only account for 13% of DraftKings points and are taking about 7/10 of a stroke for those holes. Your shorter, mid-length, 400 to 450-yard par 4s is where some of the guys are going to have a chance to convert great shots into birdies and eclipse the average that's just above par. Your guys at the top of the leaderboard are gonna average right under par for these holes. And then the other grouping of holes that's most important are the par 5s. You see they account for 43% of all the DraftKings points scored here. 3 of them very gettable, under 550 yards. You'll see on the 18th, the 15th, and on the 2nd, they all have a eagle rate right around 4%. And that's quite a bit of eagles. You will need to look for some guys that can score this week, birdies especially, but you guys will find some eagles on these very gettable par fives. As far as the par fours go, there's only two that are really that I consider really birdieable, and that's the first and the third. And that just statistically, they average the highest birdie rate of the par fours, 19% and 18% for the first and the third. So guys should be looking to get off to a hot start if they're starting on the front side. On the back side, their start is a little rougher if they happen to start on hole 10, but they do get the 3 par 5s on the back 9. Either way, guys, they're going to be scoring on this golf course, and you're going to need to make sure you find guys that are getting it done on the par 5s. You simply cannot win or perform well out here from a DraftKings perspective if you're not doing that. So definitely make sure you factor par 5 scoring in for your core this week. Let's take a look real quickly at some of the guys that have performed well here in the past. We'll start at 2017 and we'll go to 2015, see if we pick up a few names several times, and then what some of the games have in common. Starting in 2017, defending champion Johnny Vegas, actually won in 2016 as well. Johnny is a bomber ball striker that can get a hot putter. Obviously, that game has played well here the last 2 years. Charlie Hoffman, kind of a bomber. Gary Woodland, bomber. Finau, bomber. Garrigus, bomber. Brandon Hagee, Kevin Chappell, Dustin Johnson, all longer than average hitters, bombers. You get down to Keegan Bradley, JB Holmes, all bombers. Right, so quite a few in the top 14 bombers, but you mix in several guys like Ian Poulter, James Hahn, Sean O'Hare. These guys are not bombers. They had success on this course playing it nice and tidy, finding more fairways than most, excelling on their approaches and making putts. The rest of the guys bomb and gouge their way around here. Johnny, Charlie, Woodland, Garrigus, Dustin, those guys grab driver. They're hitting all they can hit, and they got a wedge in their hands coming into the greens in a lot of cases. And so that's what, in my mind, what really highlights the two ways to play this golf course is if you're worried about missing the fairway, just grab the big stick, get it down there as far as you can, grab a wedge in your hand. These aren't terribly long holes in most cases, and guys will have an opportunity. Especially if the course is dry, I think you'll see that because the balls are going to run out a little further, and maybe the rough is a little drier. You're not going to have such a penalty or a bad lie in the rough, but also you might be able to stop them on firm greens. As well, if you have a high wedge versus a longer mid iron coming in. So 2016, same thing. We got Johnny Vegas up top, Dustin Johnson again with a solid performance here. John Rahm and Jared Dutois, Jason Day, Luke List are your bombers from this year. But then you mix in guys like Ricky Barnes, Alex Sejka, Brant Snedeker, Ben Crane, Matt Kuchar, Jeff Ogilvy, Furyk, all really efficient, shorter hitters, great ball strikers, and they gave themselves opportunities, found a good putter. But again, still a solid performance. Maybe they didn't score as many DraftKings points. Maybe they didn't have some ego looks, but they still found success on the course. 2015, very similar story. Jason Day, Bubba Watson, bombers, guys at the top. Charlie Hoffman, bomber. In 2015, though, we saw a few more of your shorter, more accurate hitters. David Hearn, Jim Furyk, Tom Hoagie, Sink, Austin Cook, interesting. Adam Hadwin, all shorter hitters, great ball strikers, give themselves a lot of opportunities, and they make a few putts on bent greens. So again, there are two ways to approach selecting players or kind of narrowing down your player pool this week. How are they going to play the course? Are they going to try and bomb and gouge their way around it? Get it down there as far as they can, grab a wedge, hope they can put it tight, make a putt, or are they going to try to be the guy that is accurate, especially on the par fives, maybe accurate with their layups, make sure they find the fairway and then get a tight wedge in for par fives or a good mid iron into the longer par fours. But two ways to find success. Let's talk about what I'm going to be focused on this week when I look for my golfers. I think maybe the most important thing is par 5 scoring or birdies or better, however you want to grab that. I think that's maybe the most important thing, and then I would weight par 4 scoring second. Strokes gained off of the tee is going to be heavily factored in there for me. I do want to grab some approach and a little bit of scrambling, but I want to underweight those compared to my strokes gained off of the tee weighting. There are two ways to gain strokes off of the tee. That's through accuracy and efficiency or through raw distance, right? Or some combination of the two. But I don't really care how a guy's gaining strokes off the tee. If they're super accurate in gaining strokes, I'm interested in that because we've seen that play well here. And if they're super long but inaccurate, I'm interested in that as well. That's also played well. But one thing that'll be in common between both of those groups is they should both gain strokes off of the tee in some form or fashion. So I'm going to be factoring strokes gained off of the tee heavily this week. In conjunction with mid-length par 4 scoring and par 5 scoring. Those are going to be like my 3 core stats. I do want to sprinkle a little bit of scrambling, a little bit of a approach or around the green and approach as well. Specifically approach in the last, like 12 rounds, 24 rounds. Recent approach, if a guy is, on with his approaches recently, I'm more interested in that than not. So that's probably how I'm going to weight my stat model for the week. Of course, subject to change with weather and whatnot, but I do kind of expect a firm golf course. We saw at this same timing the last couple of years there, it was a fairly firm course. Did not see a ton of rain in the forecast, both historically or leading up to. So it looks like we could have, they are getting some rain today, I believe, but looks like we could have a fairly firm golf course once again for the Canadian Open, which should lend itself to the same skill sets that have proved successful the last 2 years. So maybe look at the last 2 years leaderboards for your skill sets as well, or for your key stats rather. But I think that's going to do it for us, guys. Make sure you give me a follow at DFS Jimmy on Twitter. Make sure you get over to FanShareSports.com, sign up for an account, check those guys out. Other than that, best of luck this week. We'll catch you guys next week.